We're excited to have our guest speakers, Robin and Ilana Abrahamson from the U.S. Forest Service Fire Effects Information System. Today, Robin and Ilana will be giving a presentation and demonstration about how to use FEIS as a tool to find fire ecology and fire science information applicable to the southeastern U.S. I would like to take just an opportunity to share a little bit of information about the Southern Fire Exchange if this is the first time you've joined us. SFE is a regional program for fire science delivery in the Southeast, and we are funded by the Federal Joint Fire Science Program. Our mission is to increase the availability and application of fire science-related information for natural resource management and to serve as a conduit for fire managers to share new research needs with the research community. For more information about us, you can see our website there at southernfireexchange.org. And finally, if you're joining us today from an area outside of the southeastern U.S., please look into connecting with your local GFSP Fire Science Exchange network. These are the folks that are working to connect regional managers and researchers to address local fire science issues. So you can click on the link to go to firescience.gov, pull up the map, and connect with the exchange or consortium in your neck of the woods. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Ilana Abrahamson leads the Fire Effects Information System team of the Fire Modeling Institute in the Fire, Fuel, and Smoke program of the Rocky Mountain Research Station. Prior to leading the team, Ilana was a writer and ecologist with the University of Montana's Fire Center and wrote species reviews and fire regime syntheses for FEIS. Ilana also writes and edits hands-on activities for the fireworks curriculum, which teaches students about the science of wildland fire. Ilana has a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from the State University of New York at Binghamton, and a master's degree in forestry from the University of Montana. Robin is an ecologist for the Fire Modeling Institute in the Fire, Fuel, and Smoke program of the Rocky Mountain Research Station. Based in New Hampshire, Robin writes and edits syntheses of scientific information for the Fire Effects Information System. Robin has a bachelor's degree in wildlife management from the University of New Hampshire and a master's degree in ecology from the University of California, Davis. Prior to working for FEIS, Robin managed several ecological research projects, including a large-scale collaborative project that evaluated the effects of land management practices on animals and their habitats. So welcome, Ilana and Robin. We're really excited to have you here today with us for a Southern Fire Exchange webinar. And just one moment as we pull up your slides and your presentation.
Okay, this is Ilana here, and thank you very much for attending the webinar today. This webinar is about finding fire ecology and fire regime information online in the Fire Effects Information System, or FEIS. We will showcase some of FEIS' newest products on fire regimes and demonstrate FEIS's new search capabilities. We will focus this presentation on ecosystems in the Southeast. I will begin with a brief overview of FEIS, and then Robin will do a live demonstration of our website and user interface. FEIS is a great resource if you've ever asked yourself questions like these. How might the use of prescribed fire affect a species I'm interested in? How can I find information on historical fire regimes in my area? How have fuels changed in the past 100 years or more? How does wildland fire affect non-native invasive plants? Or how might climate change affect fire regimes in the future? The Fire Effects Information System was designed to help answer these sorts of questions and many more. For those of you unfamiliar with FEIS, FEIS is an online collection of peer-reviewed syntheses on fire ecology and there are over 1,200 syntheses in the collection, which cover native and non-native plants, lichens, and animals in the United States. FEIS is designed to meet the needs of land and resource managers seeking the best available science for use in fire management, fuels management, general land management planning, and NEPA documents. FEIS's website is located at the bottom of the slide, and this website is new as of January. To write a synthesis for FEIS, a team of ecologists conducts thorough literature searches and critical analyses of the available information. We describe patterns or lack of patterns from the literature, explain what is known and not known, and describe implications for management. All of the information in FEIS syntheses is thoroughly documented using in-text citations. Here's some text modified from an FEIS synthesis on white mulberry, a widely distributed non-native invasive shrub. It says, the ability of white mulberry to sprout from the stump or roots suggests that top-killed white mulberry plants may regenerate vegetatively following fire. Then there are a bunch of citations. The assertion is documented, but watch what happens when we make a few changes. Now we can see exactly who said what, and the reader can go right to the source for the information on stumps, for example, which would be citation 150, and roots, which would be citation 21 and 136. The FEIS team uses in-text citations to direct readers to the sources of information. Now look at the addition of the last sentence. However, this response has only been documented once, and fire details and the type of sprouting were not specified. So this last sentence is doing this. It is putting a hedge on the knowledge to make sure that when you apply it, you're not tempted to stray outside the scope of inference from what Study 61 reported. The FEIS team uses hedges to provide a scope of inference for the readers. So why go to FEIS for syntheses when you can just Google it? Well, a Google Scholar search or any citation database search like JSTOR or Web of Science gives you a grocery list of publications. The Google Scholar search for longleaf pine and fire yields a grocery list that's 12,000 citations long. So with the synthesis, a professional ecologist has done that search for you, filtered out what is relevant, and described the patterns. And the list is getting longer each year. The amount of fire research is growing. This graph shows that publications on fire have grown exponentially in recent decades, with a total of more than 50,000 citations available on fire. In 2015 alone, there were more than 2,300 documents added to the list. So more information is becoming available, but the staff and financial resources to deal with all of this new information is limited. The purpose of FEIS is to help managers be more efficient at finding and using information on fire. FEIS provides 4 types of publications. Species reviews are a staple and have been published in FEIS since 1985. They synthesize information on plant, lichen, and animal species fire ecology and include information on species distribution, basic biology and ecology, as well as information on fire effects and management. Here's an example of a species review. This one is on giant cane. FEIS has 2 new types of publications on fire regimes: fire regime syntheses and fire regime reports. Between the 2 of them, there is information on fire regimes for every plant community in the United States. Here's an example of a fire regime synthesis. This one is on montane riparian communities in California and southwestern Oregon. We do not yet have fire regime syntheses for plant communities in the southeast, but we are developing them and we want you to be aware of them. Fire regime syntheses provide an in-depth analysis of published literature on historical fire regimes in individual plant communities, and they address contemporary changes in fuels and fire regime characteristics for those communities. Each fire regime synthesis includes a section covering the distribution and plant communities discussed, a section covering historical fire regime characteristics, which provides specific details on fire ignition, season, frequency, type, severity, intensity, pattern, and size. It also includes a section on contemporary changes in fuels and fire regimes, which might discuss the effects of changes in hydrology in fuels, climate change, and non-native invasive species as well. Finally, there's also a limitations of information section, which analyzes knowledge gaps and areas of uncertainty and identifies regions and plant community types lacking fire history data. In addition to the syntheses of the scientific literature, fire regime syntheses provide information about land fires' biophysical settings, or BPSs. In fact, fire regimes in FEIS are comprised of biophysical settings. Biophysical settings represent the vegetation that is thought to have been dominant on the landscape prior to European settlement. To view the list of individual BPSs covered by the fire regime synthesis or model, you can click on the link to the Appendix A, highlighted in gray here. To access the land fire data in the appendix, you can click on the URL and it opens a PDF. The PDF provides information on the biophysical settings, geographic range, site characteristics, vegetation, and natural disturbances, including fire. Fire regime reports are our other fire regime product. These provide only brief summaries of land fire information on fire frequency and severity for the group of biophysical settings covered by the fire regime, but it does not include an in-depth analysis of the published literature. Here is an example of a fire regime report on Gulf and Atlantic coastal oak pine communities. Right now, most of the fire regime information in FEIS are described by fire regime reports rather than syntheses. Reports include a summary table with modeled ranges of fire return intervals, fire severities, and fire regime groups. They also provide a distribution map of the BPSs covered, and the appendix, which lists the individual biophysical settings modeled covered by the reports. Fire regime syntheses, in contrast, include all of the information contained within these fire regime reports, in addition to the synthesized published literature. As an aside, one of the reasons we chose to use biophysical settings in FEIS is that the spatial layers and metadata associated with the biophysical settings are being reviewed and updated. Our fire regime syntheses are providing some of the information to update the biophysical setting models. Once the updates are completed within Landfire, we will incorporate these changes into FEIS. This provides a positive feedback of information and will make the information in FEIS some of the most up-to-date information on fire regimes available. For those of you interested in knowing more about the biophysical settings and Landfire's efforts to review and update the biophysical setting models, you can visit the www.landfirereview.org website. The last of FEIS's publication types are fire studies. These are summaries of one or more related research studies that occur in the same location. They provide detailed results on vegetation, fire characteristics, and fire effects for specific study areas. This fire study summarizes the research of studies by Carol Lippincott and a Florida sandhill longleaf pine community. Fire studies were developed to supplement FEIS's other publication types. And now I'm going to turn the screen over to Robin, who will demonstrate our user interface and website.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm going to take a moment to share my screen so that I can show you the FEIS website. Hopefully you can see that okay. If not, David will let me know. So all FEIS publications can be accessed using the new FEIS user interface. This was released September 2015. You can do a basic search for a particular species right on the home page by entering a species scientific or common name in the box and clicking on Enter Species. This is a great option if you know what you're looking for. If you're having trouble seeing me right now, you can expand to full screen, and that might make it easier to see. So you can also browse all of a certain kind of publication type by selecting Find All. There are over 1,000 species reviews, 150 fire studies, and 180 fire regimes in FEIS. You can also search for a particular publication type by using the advanced search options. These are great options if you're looking for information on a particular location or plant community type. Let's say you wanted information on how prescribed fire might affect white-tailed deer. You can find what you're looking for by entering the scientific or common name into the box. You could select more than one species name at a time by separating the search terms with the comma. And if you're copying and pasting into these boxes, take care not to paste any extra spaces or you might not get the expected results. So after entering the name, click on Enter Species. You can see that FEIS has a review of white-tailed deer that was published in 2013. The acronym has a link to the publication. Some species reviews, like this one, include information on fire regimes within the synthesis, while others, particularly the older publications, do not. But with the addition of our newest publications on fire regimes, all FEIS species reviews now have fire regime information available directly from the results page. Clicking on the available link under fire regimes brings you to a list of fire regimes associated with the white-tailed deer. So you can see what fire regimes the species may have been historically adapted to. For this widely distributed species, there are 109 fire regimes returned. So let's go back and take a look at the white-tailed deer species review really quickly. You can quickly navigate our reviews by using the blue hyperlinks. You can cite all of our reviews by using the citation located at the beginning of each review. Each synthesis is different depending on the information available in published literature. Under the disturbance and distribution and occurrence sections, all species reviews include details regarding the species' current and historical distribution and occurrence within plant communities. Going back, we can click on the biological data and habitat requirements section of the review, and we see that species reviews of animals include information on life history, diet, and preferred habitat. Species reviews on plants include information on the species' seasonal development, regeneration processes, and successional status. Of course, the focus of our species reviews is the fire effects and management sections. For species reviews on animals, this includes direct and indirect effects. We'll check out the indirect effects for the white-tailed deer. This particular review is separated by region. So you can go to the section on the southeast to find information specific to your region. Species reviews on plants include information on fire adaptations, post-fire regeneration strategies, immediate fire effects on the plant, and the plant's responses to fire. And all species reviews include a section on fire management considerations. This species review provides general recommendations that are applicable across the species range and has additional recommendations divided by region. We'll check that out. The Southern Appalachians and Southeast section, if we click on that, we can see this includes recommendations regarding browse and forage species, soft and hard mass production, and escape cover for the species in that region. Okay, so let's say you're interested in how fire affects non-native invasive plants in your forest. Let's go back to the home page, and we can look at the advanced search option for species reviews to find out more information. Let's use the drop-down menu for life form to select all plants. and the drop-down menu for nativity to select non-invasive. Now we have a drop-down menu for agency and plant community. In this case, I'm going to select agency, which includes 5 land management agencies. In this case, I'm going to select the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Southeast region, Region 4. Just for demonstration purposes, I'll just choose the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. So if the area you're not interested, that you're interested in isn't on this list, we'll take a further look at the map location search in a minute. So select Go, and we see that 44 species reviews are available for the non-native plants that are potentially in the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. So as an aside, a few years back we worked on a project on non-native invasive species in the East, and we created or updated over 100 species reviews on nearly 140 non-native taxa like these. So these are all a great resource for you. So what if you're interested in information on historical fire regimes? First, let's go home and use the Find All button. You can take a look at all the options this way. Pardon the delay, just take a moment. There we are. So we see that FEIS has 184 fire regimes. Fire regime syntheses were first published in 2013. Anything with the date of 2012 is a fire regime report. So far, the FEIS team has published syntheses for fire regimes in Alaska, California, and Hawaii, and we don't yet have any in the southeastern region. However, the FEIS team hopes to eventually publish syntheses of all the fire regimes, and the ones in the southeast are forthcoming. So the fire regime syntheses or reports can be accessed by clicking on the links under the fire regime title. With a glance, we can see the historical minimum and maximum mean fire return intervals. The information displayed in these columns is that provided by land fire modeling unless a synthesis was published for that fire regime. In that case, it is selected by FEIS staff from information found in published literature. There is a link to biophysical settings and data that Appena showed you earlier. There are also links to fire studies and species reviews that are associated with these fire regime titles. Like all results pages, these results can be exported into an Excel table for you to access at any time. The results are in alphabetical order by region, and many occur in more than one region. Let's take a quick look at this on fire regimes of Alaskan white spruce communities. In addition to the features Ilana mentioned earlier, fire regime syntheses include a summary of the synthesis. So this is a kind of synthesis of the synthesis. Reading the summary is a good way to get a quick overview of the information available. The distribution and plant community composition section of each fire regime synthesis includes a map of the land fire biophysical settings covered in the synthesis. You can click on our maps to make them bigger, and you can zoom in to read the legend. You can also go to the land fire website and download it and use the data layer yourself if you find that useful. Of course, the focus of the fire regime synthesis is the historical fire regime section, where we discuss the 8 fire regime characteristics. As we scroll through this document, we can see that we provide images and tables whenever possible to make patterns more visible to readers. Going back to the table of contents, we can navigate to the contemporary changes in fire regime section. In this review, we haven't provided information on fire exclusion, changes in ignition rates and fire size, changes in fire frequency, and climate change. In another synthesis, you might find information on non-native species here, but in this non-native species were not a big concern. Well, we know you're not in Alaska, and you want an easy way to find fire regime information on plant communities in your area. So we're going to go back to the home page. And we're going to click on the advanced search option for fire regimes. And we see we have a variety of criteria you can choose from. In this case, we're going to choose a map location option. And we have 3 maps to choose from. In this case, we will look at the conterminous US. And you can zoom in and pan as necessary to get where you want to go. In this case, I'm going to just check out this area near Gulfport, Mississippi. And we get 15 fire regimes associated with plant communities that are within a 50-mile radius circle centered at that location. So we do not yet have any fire regime syntheses in this region, but here's an opportunity to look at the fire regime reports in more detail. So let's take a look at the fire regime report for longleaf pine. We can see from the map that this fire regime report covers many biophysical settings with longleaf pine. Table 1 here shows us that the historical fire intervals of BPSs in this report ranges from 2 to 11 years, and that replacement, mixed, and low severity fires occurred in these settings historically. If we open the appendix, we can find more information about the biophysical settings that make up this fire regime. Let's click on the URL for West Gulf Coastal Plain Upland Longleaf Pine Forest and Woodland here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. Hopefully that's visible to everyone. In this PDF, we can find information about the BPS's geographic range, site characteristics, and vegetation and common disturbances. There are 5 vegetation classes described for this particular biophysical setting. If we look at the description under early development, we see that surface fire is the dominant fire type with a fire regime interval of 3 years, while in the late development class E, we see that a replacement fire regime interval for 100 years and a mixed fire regime interval of 100 years was described for this particular biophysical setting. We go to the disturbance section next. We find that the resultant modeled fire regime information has a mean fire interval of 4 years for all fires, and that surface fires are the predominant fire type. So even without a synthesis, you can find a lot about a plant community's fire regime using the fire regime reports. Well, what if a species you're interested in does not have a species review or a fire regime associated with it in FEIS? Well, going back to the home page, looking at fire studies is a great option in this case. So let's look at the advanced search option for fire studies. Again, we have many criteria we can choose from. Perhaps you're interested in information on prickly lettuce, which is a common non-native forb introduced into every state in the United States. If you looked in FEIS for a species review or a fire regime, you wouldn't find one. So this is a good example. If you did a search for fire studies with information on prickly lettuce, you'd find, we'll click go, 7 fire studies that have fire fix information on the species. So a fire study can be accessed through links. In this case, we'll just click on the first one, Armor and Others, to access this fire study. So this fire study summarizes 2 studies by the same authors that occurred in the same location, happens to be in Idaho in this case. One is published and the other is not. So FEIS has some potentially hard to find information. We're going to use the find function to find prickly lettuce in the text. You can quickly see that prickly lettuce was considered a fire-adapted species and that it was most common on high-intensity burn sites. So there's some potentially very valuable and relevant information available to you in fire studies as well. So that completes my live demonstration. I'm going to quickly go back, stop sharing my screen, and go back to you, Ilana.
Thanks, Robin. Looks like it's just taking a minute here. Okay, perfect. So if after examining the publications that FEIS has to offer, and you still don't find the information you need, FEIS has one more resource for you. On the home page, there is a link to the citation database. Click Go, and you will be taken to the Citation Retrieval System, or CRS. CRS is one of the reference databases that FEIS writers use to find documents to review. It contains more than 60,000 citations. CRS is continually being updated with the most recent publications on fire. So CRS is a great place to go if you're looking to supplement syntheses in FEIS with the most up-to-date literature on fire. It also contains rare historical documents. All of the documents in CRS are housed in the Fire Effects Library at the Missoula Fire Sciences Laboratory in Missoula, Montana. You can contact FEIS staff for help with literature searches, because they're not always as intuitive as you may think. So as you can see, we can answer all kinds of different questions using FEIS, and the new user interface is a powerful tool for accessing that information. As a recap, species reviews and fire studies are great resources for syntheses of information on fire effects and fire ecology. And fire regime syntheses and reports are great resources for information on historical and contemporary fire regimes. Last year, FEIS received more than 500,000 unique visits. FEIS gets visits from every state. In 2015, most visits were from California, followed by Texas, Washington, Oregon, New York, Colorado, Arizona, and Florida. FEIS also had visits from 54 countries outside of the United States. In 2015, 40% of the 50 most frequently viewed products in FEIS were species reviews of invasive plants, and 32% were reviews of native trees. The FEIS user interface and database is relatively new, and we're still improving its contents. Occasionally you might get some odd results, but we're working on the database regularly, so that happens less frequently. We're always looking for feedback on how FEIS is being used and on ways of improving our products. Please use the Contact Us link on our homepage to provide feedback. You can also sign up for FEIS News to get the latest information about FEIS. And with that, we'd love to open it up for any. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Once again, if you guys joined us during the presentation or after we got started, my name is David Godwin, and I'm the coordinator for the Southern Fire Exchange and the host today. We just had a fantastic presentation on the FEIS system from Ilana Abrahamson and Robin and Ilana. So we do have some time left in our hour. If you have questions or comments for our guests, please go ahead and type them in the chat pod and we will field them. Looks like we had one question that was just starting to come in. So to get things started, I'll go ahead and just go ahead and give a plug. I have really enjoyed and used and shared the species reviews with folks when I've given presentations at some of the prescribed fire council meetings across the South. And I think there's really a lot that those species reviews can offer folks who are looking to put together burn plans or reports. Let's see, Two other questions are just starting to come in. Alan says the audio is really starting to break up. That could be a bandwidth thing that we're encountering. One question I have, you mentioned that we don't have the fire regime syntheses put together for the Southeast yet. Do you have any idea on a timeline of when that might come out?
Hi, David. This is Ilana. Thanks for that question. Not a very detailed timeline, unfortunately. There's about 6 writers right now, and we're currently working on fire regimes in ponderosa pine communities. So that will take a bit of time. And initially, at least down the next year or so, we'll be working on fire regimes in western communities still, areas that tend to receive the most wildfire and most wildfire risk. But given that we are targeting areas that receive a lot of fires, I would certainly hope that we get to the Southeast, because we all know how frequent fires occur there. So sorry I don't have a more definitive answer for you.
Okay. Well, we can look forward to it when it
Yeah.
eventually comes out. I don't see any other questions yet, so I'll go ahead and ask another one. Does FEIS have any association or search capabilities? Is it tied at all to the FRAMES database?
No, we're not tied to the FRAMES database. If you search for, within FEIS, you will not be linked to FRAMES. But we do speak with some of those folks regularly. And some of the overlap, I think, between FEIS and FRAMES is more our citation retrieval system, or FEIS, which is our fire effects library and database for our citations. And FRAMES has an extensive library as well. And we do talk with them a bit about how to collaborate that, but there are, some major differences between, our library and theirs.
So depending on the level of depth that folks are looking to go into for their search, their literature search, you could kind of consider FRAMES and maybe even tree search and FEIS as all tools in your toolbox.
Absolutely, and we have syntheses of information, obviously more, and CRS isn't the syntheses, but one of the things that I think could be valuable is if you are looking for information on a species that is not common, so there's not a lot of published literature on it, it can be hard to find that information, because generally when you use JSTOR or Web of Science for a species that isn't particularly common, you are not going to get a lot of information. So within CRS, we keyword for any species that has results. So so that's one of the benefits of it, is if something has been measured in a study, we are keywording to it. So that's the benefit of CRS.
That's a huge benefit. That can really take a lot of the legwork out of the literature search.
Exactly.
And make things a lot more efficient. That's when I have talked about FEIS, the species reviews are really what I've pitched, because I think that's something that really can save people a lot of time when they're looking for information, and even citations. If you don't necessarily need to read the primary literature to include that in your plan, but maybe you do need a citation to add at the end. Those species reviews still provide the citation list at the end that folks can still add to their documents, to their burn plans.
Yep, absolutely. And I see another question. It says, why are you doing the West before the Southeast, where the most fires occur? That's a great question. Part of the reason is determined by our funders and requests that we had from the folks that give us a lot of our funding. So that's part of the reason.
Well, that's understandable. All right. Well, it looks like that's about it. In terms of the questions we have, I'm going to switch over 1 second here, and everyone can see again a clickable link there to take you to the FEIS website. The Southern Fire Exchange last year put together a fact sheet with some tips and tricks on how to use FEIS efficiently for finding some fire science information. You can also see the contact information for both Robin and Ilana. So it looks like we've pretty much run up to the end of our time today. So thank you so much for joining us and for your presentations. We do have a link there to provide feedback. We do hope that you'll click and just answer about 5 questions and let our speakers know and let the Southern Fire Exchange know what you thought of our webinar today. And we also take suggestions on there on how we can line up our webinar series to meet your fire science needs in the future.